Kids got me this shirt. I don't know why. Hello Tarantula lovers, I'm Alex and you're watching Tarantula Haven. I'm going to try to keep it short today because it's Father's Day and I got Father's Day stuff to do. So what I have for you today is another molt. Yes, it's still molting season. I've got tarantulas that are still molting left and right. This one is my special girl. I get a lot of people asking me questions about her because they see her in my old intro. They used to see her at the very end of the intro, and I get a lot of people that ask me what species is that because it's so beautiful. And this is my Brachypelma bainey, or Brachypelma bomi, or Brachypelma however you want to pronounce it. Now, when a tarantula molts, it's usually not a stressful thing. A lot of the times it happens without your knowledge. You open the enclosure and, oh, my tarantula molted. Or sometimes as it's happening, you get excited because you want to watch it and you look forward to being able to determine the sex of the tarantula after the molt. And, you know, it's not necessarily a stressful thing. But every now and then you get a molt that doesn't go quite as you expected and you start to get a little bit worried and you get a little bit scared. Sometimes there are horror stories where things go completely wrong and bad things can happen to your tarantula. So keep in mind that this is a time period when your tarantula is most vulnerable. So if conditions aren't right, a molt can go completely wrong. So that's kind of a nightmare for tarantula keepers. So this is one of those occasions where things didn't go quite as expected, and it really had me stressed out. I actually stayed up most of the night watching this, and the longer it went on, the more stressed I became. So take a look at this video. I did a time lapse of it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on here so that you're aware of the situation. So I was particularly excited about this molt because I was capturing it at the beginning before she rolls over. Most of the time when I find them, they're usually already on their back. So this was the first time I was going to capture it from the beginning. Now this is interesting. She tried to roll over. She got about halfway and then she rolled back over. And this behavior right here, they will flick their urticating hairs to lay down on their web mat that they create. And I guess this gives them an extra layer of protection so that while they're in their vulnerable state, if something comes along sniffing or whatever, it'll get a snoot full of those urticating hairs and possibly leave it alone. So it was really cool to see this. A lot of times you don't see this because, like I said, most of the time when I know they're getting ready to molt, and I'll look in there and next thing you know they're on their back and they're already molting. So it was cool to see it from the beginning. Now, see the bald spot there on her abdomen? You can tell that she's ready to molt because it's black. That means that there's new hair underneath that, and you know that skin is pretty much transparent. So it looks like she's ready to roll over now. Again, she's caught in that halfway position. I guess she's trying to make up her mind. So let me give you some background as to why I was so worried. The whole process started about 9 p.m. and I was watching, and when she flipped over, I wasn't really getting a whole lot of response from her. She was just laying there, and that's typical. They'll sit there for a long time, sometimes 2 hours or so. But time just kept going by, and I kept getting nothing. And she was barely moving. Most of the time, they're wiggling a little bit. Their legs are kind of moving around. But the only thing that I was seeing was her fangs were just kind of wiggling back and forth. and I immediately started to worry that maybe she was stuck in her molt. I had a friend who had a T. sturmey who ended up breaking its fangs because it was stuck in its molt and the fangs broke off. So that was pretty terrifying. So anyway, this went on for a long time. It was about 2 a.m. and finally I decided to go to bed. So when I woke up in the morning at 6 a.m., this is what I woke up to, and I was very relieved that her fangs were out, but I was surprised because it took all night for it to pretty much get to this point, and it was not anywhere near finished molting. So it was strange. This had never happened before. She usually molts relatively quickly. So this is why I had that fear. And like I said, I had a friend who had that happen. I've seen other people who have had that happen with their tarantulas, especially the ones that are very reliant on moisture. Now this one is not, so it was very shocking and surprising to me that this was happening. So anyway, from this point forward, everything was just kind of business as usual, and it worked out just fine. So, you know, it was one of those things where I just didn't know, I didn't realize, and it had never happened to me before. Now, once the tarantula is out of its molt, people always ask me, why does the tarantula always twitch and pump its legs and move around like that? Well, what's happening here is that the tarantula has gotten larger, and it doesn't have a skeleton like you and I do, so its exoskeleton is still relatively soft, and it has blood inside of it, which is called hemolymph. And it literally has to pump that blood into the newly grown appendages or the larger appendages. So it's basically filling itself out. A lot of that is trapped in the abdomen, and when they pump themselves like that, they're filling in the legs because they have actually gotten larger. Fortunately, everything turned out okay, so I was very happy about that. I had been looking forward to this molt. I have a male that should be getting ready to molt, and I believe he's penultimate, which means that he's getting ready to mature. So hopefully by this next molt he will mature, and I'll be able to pair the two together and see if I can get an egg sac out of him. Now, most tarantula keepers, if they witness the molt take place and they can get the molt early enough, a lot of them will like to sex the molt or check the molt to see if they can determine the sex of the tarantula. Even if it doesn't happen right away and you find an old molt, there's still a way that you can rehydrate that molt and go in there and look at it and still determine the sex of the tarantula. So I'm going to do that for you here. I already know that this is a female, but I want to demonstrate to you how I know and how you look for those kinds of things. Okay, so the cool thing about when a tarantula molts and you see it, happen right away, you can retrieve that molt, and you can use that molt to determine the sex of your tarantula. And like I mentioned before, this is a female. I know that it's a female, but when I first bought it, I wasn't sure. The guy told me it was, but I had to wait until the first molt to determine whether it was a female or not, if he was telling me the truth, and in fact he was. So I use a couple of sticks to open it up. You can see it's still pretty wet and sticky in there because this just happened. It just finished. And I want to spread out the skin of the abdomen out to get a good look. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little piece of paper in here so that you can see clearly the female parts. Now, when you're looking for the sex, you want to look between the anterior book lungs, and what you're looking for is this little flap right here that is known as the epigastric furrow. Now, there are other parts there. There's the uterus externus and the spermatheca, but for the most part, the epigastric furrow contains those parts, and that's what you're looking for. As long as you have that flap there, then you know it's a female. Now, of course, they look different from species to species. Now, males are a little bit easier to determine. If there's no flap there, if it's just kind of flat and there's nothing present, then you have yourself a male. But sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell from species to species. This one has a very prominent epigastric furrow, so it's very easy to tell with this one pretty early on. Before I go and before I forget, I'd like to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, Pickles616 Gaming. Here's your shout out. That's it for me today. If you enjoyed this, please give me a like, leave me a comment below. If you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to support this channel, I do have a Redbubble store. I'll put that in the description below, the link to that. And any of the proceeds that I get from the Redbubble store will go directly to help grow and support this channel. To all of you dads out there, happy Father's Day. I hope there's tarantulas in your Father's Day. Until next time, keep loving them tarantulas.